The FDA gives Pfizer's vaccine a sterling report card. Why AT&T is public enemy number one in Hollywood, and Apple's new headphones are here, and they're expensive. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Wednesday, December 9th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Good morning,
You sure
Carlo.
about that?
Today actually is Wednesday, right?
Yeah. Why not? Sure. No, it is.
All right, let's get to it, Carlo. The FDA has released its first analysis of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine data as it prepares to consider an emergency authorization as soon as this week. The analysis found that the vaccine provides significant protection against COVID-19 after the first of 2 doses, even more than they originally thought, and it works well regardless of a person's age, weight, or race. One epidemiologist said the FDA basically gave Pfizer an A-plus report card. Separately, the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine appears to be 70% effective, according to the first peer-reviewed study of that drug, which, by the way, is much cheaper and easier to make and transport than the others. And overnight, the UAE has approved a Chinese vaccine after preliminary data showed that it was 86% effective. So the vaccine race really heating up now, Carlo.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, sorry, but I'm not taking any vaccine made by any state-run Russian or Chinese company. I mean, maybe that makes me xenophobic. I don't know. But you know what? I shouldn't say that. I should say that I wouldn't take that vaccine unless the FDA said it was okay. I just wouldn't trust those companies. I'm sorry, but what you said about the Pfizer vaccine is really important stuff. That is the big news. They're going to approve this vaccine, I would suspect, tomorrow, Friday at the latest. We're going to start to see people getting shots as soon as this weekend. It's a big deal. But Jill, on a lighter note, did you see William Shakespeare?
I did see William Shakespeare. So William Shakespeare, for anyone who doesn't know, is the second person in the UK who got the vaccine. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up that's his name. I went on Twitter. That happened while we were on the air for Wake Up with Cheddar. I saw William Shakespeare was trending. So it was one of those things where you're like, okay, so why is William Shakespeare trending in the year 2020? And it's like, oh my gosh, this is the second person who got the vaccine. It's incredible.
Not only is his name William Shakespeare, by the way, he goes by Bill, which just FYI.
Billy. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I think Bill.
He's even actually from the same county in England as the real William Shakespeare. This is how you know you're living in a simulation, because like you said, you couldn't make that up. Come on. But Joe, one quick thing on the vaccine. The one thing that I'm looking for these next couple of days, we really haven't seen any information about this question of asymptomatic spread in vaccinated people. I think we still, unless I've missed something, and if I have, please somebody let me know. But I haven't seen any good data on that question, because that could be a big deal, right? If you're vaccinated and you're still asymptomatically spreading the virus.
I believe the AstraZeneca vaccine, I was watching an interview that Moshe, who we've had on our podcast before, that he did with a doctor who said he believes that the AstraZeneca vaccine there's data to suggest that it prevents asymptomatic spread. But his thinking was, these likely do. They all probably do. We just don't really know because it's just something that's kind of hard to measure. By the way, in the interviews with some of these people who are getting the vaccines, we talk so many numbers and statistics, but again, just the personal stories. You sent me that interview with somebody else who got the vaccine. He was being interviewed on CNN, and he had called the hospital, and because he heard that the hospital near him was giving them out. He called. He was eligible. He went. And he was telling a CNN reporter what it was like for him. And he was basically just like, I have a reason to live now. I have granddaughters. I'm going to be able to hug them again. And you can't help but tearing up, when you think, okay, we're almost at the end of this thing. And what has this year been like for people who really had to isolate themselves or who live alone? Or and that doesn't even go into the people who've lost loved ones or who are sick from this virus.
Yeah.
But following up on something that we talked about the other day, so Rudy Giuliani he says he's feeling good. Of course, he has COVID. He told CNN that he got the exact same treatment as President Trump when he was hospitalized. Quoting the president's lawyer, quote, his doctor sent me here, talked me into it. I didn't really want to go to the hospital. And he said, don't be stupid. We can get it over in 3 days if we send you to the hospital. So that's the quote from Giuliani, right? So he basically went, he didn't want to go to the hospital. He went. And so what is he getting? Remdesivir. If he's getting the exact same treatment as President Trump, then he's getting the Regeneron treatment as well. He's on steroids. Needless to say, most people, besides for Giuliani and Trump, do not get that kind of care, especially at this point. Also, Jenna Ellis, who's another lawyer for the Trump campaign, she has tested positive, and she attended at least one Christmas party at the White House, which is now leading to some new worries about another outbreak in the West Wing. Meanwhile, Carla, the legislatures in Michigan and another state, which escapes me, are basically quarantining because Rudy Giuliani was recently there and talking to them without a mask.
Imagine being so out of touch that you would actually say what Rudy said out loud, even if that was true, that you actually got that treatment, that you would tell people that, like, knowing how irresponsible you have been. It's amazing. As for the White House, you have to assume at this point that they have herd immunity over there, right? I mean, like, seriously, has anyone in the White House not had COVID at this point? It's it's like the biggest hotspot in America, or at least it was.
Yeah, the vaccine approvals cannot come soon enough. The first signs of the suspected post-Thanksgiving wave are now appearing. The U.S. is averaging about 200,000 daily cases over the last week. One silver lining is that the states that got that fall surge earliest, like North Dakota and New Mexico, they are showing decreased case numbers, but nearly 40 other states are still seeing rising caseloads. We're losing about 2,000 Americans every single day.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like, I know we say this every day, but it's just such an unimaginable toll, and you get so inured to it after all of this time. But it's just remarkable, and it's just so sad. One thing, Jill, I'm trying to figure out what to make of New York City, because our positive test rate here has been going up, but it's really not as bad here as elsewhere, and you'd think that it would have been by now. So I mean, maybe we have some level of herd immunity from the spring, right? What do you make of that?
I don't make of it the herd immunity, because herd immunity is really 60%. So I don't think it's herd immunity. I just think it's we've got stricter laws. I think people wear masks. I would probably attribute it to masks.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's definitely probably all of the above. But yeah. It's just it's remarkable. You'd think that a dense city like this would have been in the crosshairs for another surge, but that, knock on wood, hasn't happened yet here.
The reason that it was so bad, though, was because subways were packed in March. Subways are not packed anymore, right? Restaurants were packed. When you look at what's going on in a lot of other states, and you look at pictures, it's kind of like business as usual, at least up till a couple weeks ago. Restaurants were full. People don't wear masks. It was like just culturally, it was different. And I also don't happen to not think that New York is out of the woods yet. I'm at the point, I feel like that how I felt in March and April was sort of that feeling of, okay, I now know a lot of people who have it. And that's how I'm feeling again now, where we've had some cases that hit a little too close to home at work. Actually, one of our colleagues who had it, I was talking to her yesterday, and she told me, I'm like, how are you doing? And she's young and she's healthy. And she told me, she's like, I feel okay. I'm just still so tired. I mean, and she had this virus weeks ago. So this is a big deal. Like, you don't want to get this.
No, yeah, the mental fog thing is the thing that really scares me on a personal level. Like, I don't worry that I'm going to get COVID and die. I worry that I'm going to get it and I'm going to be sort of like out of it for a while. That's the thing that really makes me nervous.
Meanwhile, the White House has started to re-engage with Congress on a stimulus deal, offering a $916 billion compromise bill that would include some help for state and local governments to satisfy Democrats, a liability shield for businesses to satisfy Republicans, but no enhanced unemployment benefits for people who've been out of work. Instead, the offer on the table includes a direct payment of $600 to every American and enough money to extend regular federal unemployment benefits. And Carla, this doesn't mean a deal is done. In fact, it could actually hurt the bipartisan framework that both sides of the aisle had been working on before the White House got involved.
Yeah, that's sort of what I think it's going to hurt rather than help, because they had been making progress before Mnuchin stepped in on behalf of President Trump. This is just so frustrating to me, Jill. I don't need $600, right? I have a job. I'm fine. I mean, this sucks, right? Everything sucks, but I don't need money from the government right now. Get this friggin' money to people who are out of work. Like, how difficult is this? I just don't understand. It is so frustrating to me. We're talking about these direct payments. I mean, look, I think direct payments are politically a good idea, but it's not instead of enhanced unemployment benefits for people like my friend Zach, who is now going on 9 months of being out of his restaurant job. Like, those are the people who need help, not me and you.
Right, and it's very clear which industries were hurt. There's just a way to do this that could really help, you're right, the people who need it.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we move on, Jill, I do want to briefly tell you guys about an awesome podcast. How's that for transition? An awesome podcast called Surprisingly Brilliant. This is a really good one. For centuries, science has given us breakthroughs that have changed how we view our planet, our universe, even our own bodies. But achieving these breakthroughs didn't come easy. Surprisingly Brilliant collects the most shocking, inspiring, and downright bizarre stories from our science history. You can find Surprisingly Brilliant on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Another really great podcast from our friends over at Group 9 Media.
I feel like this one's right up your alley, Carlo.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, now back to the news. DoorDash goes public on the New York Stock Exchange today, pricing its IPO at $102 per share last night. That's higher than the expected range. DoorDash is not profitable. It's valued at about $38 billion after what's been an incredible year for the company. Airbnb, by the way, is set to follow with its IPO tomorrow over at the NASDAQ.
Now, Airbnb actually did make a profit last quarter, if I'm not mistaken, for the first time after they made some serious cost-cutting moves at that company. Look, I'm not a we say this every time we're talking about like an IPO. It's like, I'm just a simple country boy, right? I'm not a financial guru. I'm no Jim Cramer. But it seems to me like companies that don't make money aren't good investments. I mean, again, I'm clearly wrong about this, because every piece of data would show that some of these stocks, grow like crazy. Just the stocks go up just based on the company's growth, which I think is the sort of strategy behind a company like DoorDash. But I don't know. I mean, do these companies show a path to profitability?
I mean, look, it's something that we saw with Uber, right? Uber and Lyft recently went public pre-pandemic, but relatively recently. They were much hyped. Wall Street was pretty excited for it. And it was, one of these sexier headlines in the business world, Uber and Lyft finally going public. And there's not a path to profitability, or at least there wasn't one. And, I've interviewed a bunch of analysts and experts on Cheddar about Airbnb, at least. Most think it's probably going to be overvalued, right? Just because, and they say, just because you have heard of it or you use the service, that doesn't mean that it's a good investment. So they are advising, especially younger millennials, to think about how many people have started to trade during the pandemic, right? We've seen Robinhood exploding, the trading app. And there is this, one of these experts that I was talking to was just like, investors need to be wary here. Just because you've heard of the brand and you're excited about it, not necessarily worth investing in it on the day of its IPO.
No, of course, you got to look at the fundamentals. I mean, I guess Tesla is an example of something. I mean, they were once unprofitable, right? And now they make money, and that stock has gone absolutely bonkers this year. So I don't know. If you want stock advice, listen to Jim Cramer.
Right. No, I mean, we're not, and it's funny. This other podcast that I listened to, I'll never forget it. The host, if Scott Galloway on Pivot, was saying, it was many months ago, he was talking about he was talking about Tesla, and he's like, if you told me the stock was going to double in valuation, I'd believe you. If you told me it was going to half in valuation, I'd believe you. He's like, I don't know what's going to happen with it.
Yeah.
None of what's going on seems to totally make a lot of sense right now. Speaking of something that may not make sense to you, Apple has announced a pair of noise-canceling headphones. They go on sale next Tuesday. The price tag is $549. You heard me correctly. The AirPods Max have a lot of the same features as the wildly popular AirPods and the AirPods Pro, but they go over the ear. They come in 5 colors. They're about $200 more expensive than similar type of high-end headphones that are made by Sony. They can activate the Siri voice assistant. There's also this dial at the top of the right ear where you can control volume and phone calls. So there's some cool features, but the price
That's
tag
impressive,
it's
man.
kind of crazy.
$600 with tax. Read the room, guys, right? I mean, I know Apple can do whatever they want, but like, you read the room. And I also I remember I took a class in marketing in college once, and they talked about how like there's all this like data behind how you price things. Like it's why things are priced like it with 99 cents, because mentally you don't think of like you think of it as cheaper, even though it's pretty much the same price, right? It seems like this is something like you price them at $450, right? You're still going to make a ton of money. That's like a price that is at least a little bit more something you can wrap your head around than anything over $500, at least in my mind. By the way, I say this as somebody who has probably spent a total of $500 on AirPods in the last year, just by virtue of having lost them now twice. But this is it's just crazy, these prices.
Well, the plus side is that you probably won't lose them because they're much bigger. Have you
Right.
seen a picture of the case, Carlo?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, not
It
to
looks
be
like a bra,
immature,
right?
but it looks yeah,
No,
like it looks like
yeah.
a bra or worse. It's just
It's
um, look. Do yourself a favor, everyone. Google it and you'll get a
but
chuckle.
you know what?
Unless you're more
Before we move
mature
on,
than I am, and then you
yeah.
won't.
No, I got a good laugh when you sent that to me, Joel. But before we move on, I just want to say something briefly. The thing that annoys me about this, like it feels like we're living in two planets in this country right now. We're talking about $600 headphones. You know, maybe the government's going to kick us $600 in a stimulus check. There's people out there that have been out of work for 9 months. They've got their kids at home failing second grade on Zoom. It's like I don't want to get into it. It's just there's this real sense. I have this real sense of unease right now just about how it feels that this country is really on these like divergent paths that aren't even remotely in the same like hemisphere of reality, if that makes any sense.
It does. It's the K-shaped recovery, as we
Right,
call it.
exactly.
Okay, I'm going to move on because just want to get really quickly to some other business news. The CEO of AT&T defending the decision by the company's Warner Media unit to break the theatrical window for all of Warner Brothers movies next year. So John Stankey told an investor conference that the studio had to change its business model in 2021 because what the industry has been doing during the pandemic is not working. The comments came after Tenet director Christopher Nolan slammed Warner, calling HBO Max, quote, the worst streaming service, amid new reports that much of Hollywood felt blindsided and was furious by the decision.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit yesterday. I was thinking about this after you said you wanted to talk about it today. I understand why actors and filmmakers and producers are sort of losing their minds about this because it is a very big deal. Like you said the other day, like this is something that it feels like once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's very hard to get it back in. But Christopher Nolan, seriously, dude, shut up, right? Like this is your fault. The reason why Warner's is doing this is because Tenet made $57 million at the domestic box office this summer. That's nothing. And the reason why that happened is because he personally refused to let them release it on demand for like 20, 25, 30 bucks at the pinnacle of everybody staying home. That's going to go down as one of the dumbest decisions in Hollywood history. I mean, I know that we've said this before, but have you looked at the offerings on video on demand right now? The cupboard is bare, guys. There's nothing playing. There's nothing out there. If Nolan allowed them to put a movie like Tenet on demand, it would have made $1 billion because everybody would have watched it because there's nothing else happening in the culture, right? You would have paid for it. I would have paid for it. My parents would have paid for it. This like preening gatekeeper attitude really annoys me, and it's so apparent, especially in places like Hollywood. Make good stuff and then make it easy for people to consume it. Like that's the heart of the entire media business, and Hollywood has not gotten the memo even after this year, watching their entire business model collapse in on itself. So I find it very hard to have like empathy for people like Christopher Nolan here.
I think that what we're seeing in the film industry is kind of even what the TV industry and the news industry went through a while ago. And one just small example, I remember you and I both worked for NBC on the net desk, right? And I remember
Yep.
there was a time when that 6:30 p.m. nightly news, that evening news show, all the major networks have it. That was it. That's the flagship show. Everything was
Yep.
focused on that. And I remember many years ago when I was working there, it was hard sometimes to get some of the veteran reporters to say, okay, I'll do stuff for MSNBC, which is their cable
Yep.
network, right? Because it was kind of like, I'm working on my nightly news package. I
Yeah.
don't have time to do 4 hits on MSNBC. And then
It's
this
the
is
same thing.
before
It's the
even
same
social
idea.
media.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this
Right.
was even before social media. It wouldn't have even it wouldn't have been even possible to say, can you don't break this story. You break this story, excuse me, on Twitter instead of on the nightly news, or
Right.
break the story on MSNBC instead of on the nightly news. And you got to just keep adjusting and keep, you have to just be flexible. This is the way it's
Meet the
going, right?
audience where it
The same
is.
way.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. People want to get their news in a certain way. They might want to get it on Instagram. They might want to get it via a podcast. So exactly, you have to meet them. If people right now do not want to go to a theater because they're not comfortable, meet them where they are, which is in their living
Exactly.
room. Okay, finally, some news that's not going over particularly well in my house. The annual Big Ten rivalry game between Michigan and Ohio State that was scheduled for this weekend has been canceled. Michigan has too many positive COVID tests to field a team, and it is the first season since 1917 that won't feature a matchup between the Buckeyes and the Wolverines, aka the game.
Oh, Jill, I thought of you when I saw this break on ESPN last night. How are you guys coping? How's Mike doing?
So, it's upsetting, right? We were looking forward to it. There's not much going on
Yeah.
these days. Our weekends are basically based around football or some sort of entertainment on TV. We wait for this every year, and also for Ohio State. Michigan has had a terrible season, so I don't even want
Yeah.
to get into it. But Ohio State's had a good season, and there's a rule in the Big Ten conference right now. The Big Ten conference, that you have to play 6 games to be eligible for the championship game. And because Michigan canceled, Ohio State only has 5. So there's thinking that perhaps maybe they'll change the rule. Maybe the Big Ten conference is going to meet and change the rules. But it's a shame for the players. You hope that people get. Obviously, it's a health crisis first, but just definitely disappointment. It's like a fun day for us.
Yeah. No, look, I mean, I think you gave the bumper sticker slogan earlier this year when you were just like, look, everything sucks. Get over it. One day it won't suck again, but right now it sucks, right? That's how I feel about this.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're over it. You know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
were psyched for the game. And forget us. How about the players, the coaches?
Yeah.
It's just one of those
It's a bummer.
years, Carlo. All right,
is
we're
one
going
of
to
those
leave it there.
years.
That's what you need to know for Wednesday, December 9th.
Bye, guys.